Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we have a little bit of a special review because this one is my New Year's Day review for 2024. So as I always do on these kind of special occasion reviews, I just want to give a huge shout out and thank you to all of you who have supported the channel over the course of 2023 and beyond. It really is cool to see something that I started as a little bit of a hobby just grow and be quite as popular as it is. And I've met some really cool people through doing the channel. Long may that continue. No plans of stopping at all at the moment. But I wish all of you a very happy and prosperous 2024. Try some nice beers, spend time with your family and friends, travel the world, see new places. That's what it's all about. But yeah, for this review today, I have a beer that I think should be really interesting. This one is from Japan, and it's also from a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good few times before. These guys are very much a well-respected and up-and-coming brewery here in Japan, and they're best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. But the beer we're looking at today is not one of those. This is something quite a bit different at the opposite end of the beer scale, but it is supposed to be really quite nice. And they've released this beer a few different times, and if memory serves me correctly, this may well be the original release of this particular beer. This one is a couple of years old, and it was one of the ones that was in the bag that got pushed to the back of the cupboard by Michiko, and we just rediscovered it recently, and it should be quite nice. I've heard very good things about this one. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we're going to head a little bit to the north of me here in Osaka up to Yamanashi Prefecture, a little city called Hokuto, which is to the west of Tokyo, and that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Uchu Brewing. So this particular beer is called Saturn. It comes in at 12% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Stout. So this is both the strongest beer that we've tried from Uchu on the channel thus far, and it's also the first Imperial Stout that we've tried from them. It's the first beer, I think, that isn't some kind of IPA. So yeah, this should be very interesting. Now, from what I understand, Uchu have released a new version of this beer every year. I think this was the very first Imperial Stout that they released. It's batch number 154. But yeah, they have re-released Saturn in cans in recent times, and that one is 11%, but this particular version is 12%, and I think this one dates back from like 2020 or 2021. I'm not 100% sure, but the date, I don't know if this is a bottled on date or a best before date, but the date that it has on the back here is 2009-27, so the 27th of September 2020. So this beer may well be from 2019. I might have been telling you lies in these reviews of older beers that I found here. Maybe they're from a little bit earlier than that. But yeah, certainly cool to try what I believe is the first version of the Saturn Imperial Stout from Uchu Brewing. My very first dark beer from these guys, unless we're counting black IPAs, because I think we did have one or two black IPAs from them before. But let's crack on with this one in any case and see what it's all about. The Saturn Imperial Stout at 12% ABV from Uchu Brewing in Hokuto, Yamanashi Prefecture here in Japan. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Uchu Brewing before, and we will definitely add more to that list in the near future because I love the stuff that these guys are doing. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment, and you can check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. And make sure you do that because there are some very interesting reviews on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on and tell you a little bit about Uchu Brewing once again. Onto my brewery notes. So, Uchu Brewing, as I've told you before, were founded back in 2017 by Masahiro Kusunose and Rumiko Suzuki. So these guys both came from a background in agriculture, and they first encountered craft beer on the US West Coast, and they found that they loved the different personalities that each brewery had, and they wanted to bring some of this craft beer culture back to Japan with them. So Masahiro is the main brewer, and Rumiko mainly does the marketing and business side of things, but she does also take part in the brewing from time to time as well, and the farming side of the business too. So they actually started their farming activities in Japan back in 2009 under the name Space Farmers, and they were growing rice and vegetables without pesticides, and in 2016 they planted hops for the first time, and they have their own hop fields right next to the current brewery, and they often hand pick a number of the hops that go into the beers. But today they run miso making and rice paddy workshops as well, so they're not just a brewery, they're a proper kind of agricultural farm to fridge kind of business, if you like, which I think is really interesting. But they raised over 3 million yen through crowdfunding, and they used this to build their own brewery in Hokuto in Yamanashi Prefecture, and much of the construction of this original facility was DIY. But they sold their first beers under the Uchu Brewing brand name in 2018, and then they expanded the brewery in 2021 with a second round of crowdfunding, which raised over 17 million yen. But the next year in 2022, they raised a further 12 million yen through crowdfunding, and they used this to open their first tap room, which is called Roadside Station Kobuchisawa, and this is about 15 kilometers away from the brewery. At the moment, I believe they're trying to prepare things to open a larger second brewery. I'm not sure if they'll keep the original brewery, we'll just need to see, but yeah, they are working on getting a larger facility at the moment, from what I understand. But the name Uchu Brewing literally translates into English as space brewing, and thus most of their beers are named after space phenomena, space themes and things, hence the name. Saturn in this case. I think Mars is another one I've seen produced quite regularly. They had a 7 planets series, I think, or an 8 planet series a couple of years ago, and this one was the Imperial Stout. So yeah, a few of them have made reappearances. I don't know if they've brewed all of them again, but certainly Mars and Saturn are ones that have appeared more than once. But as of December 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 200 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I said earlier, they are known mainly for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, although we have had 1 or 2 West Coast IPAs from them before, and I think we had a black IPA from them at some stage too. But yeah, they've been releasing a few sour beers in recent times too, if memory serves me correctly. I've seen 1 or 2 beers on Liquor Shop Asahiya's Facebook page from Uchu that have been different kinds of fruited sours and things. So yeah, at the moment Uchu are going through an expansion phase. They've added a number of staff to their brewing team, and they're trying to brew different styles of beer too, which is very, very cool. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Uchu Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. I'm really not sure how well you're going to see the writing there. I'll see if I can just tilt the light there. But you can see on the label there's little grooves there. So it says Saturn in sort of shiny black letters, and then it's got a circle, and you can see the little Uchu hop flower in the middle there. But as I said earlier, this one is an Imperial Stout at 12% ABV. From looking through one of the famous Japanese blog sites, which I think is Craft Beer Life, the information I was able to find on this particular batch of the beer is that this one was brewed with maple syrup, starch syrup, lactose and vanilla beans, and I have seen the newer versions of this beer labelled as Imperial Pastry Stout, but if this one is from like 2019, 2020, that wasn't such a big thing back then. But like I said, this is a slightly different version of the beer. This one's 12%, the newer ones tend to be 11. But yeah, this is, I think this is 350 milliliters, 330 apparently. But yeah, plain silver top on the bottle there, and you've seen me review bottle beers from Uchu before, but the newer ones are cans. But let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. Little tiny bit of sediment at the bottom of the bottle there, but yeah, it's all natural. It should be fine. Let's get this guy out and into the glass. This is a beer I've been wanting to try for a wee while since I rediscovered this big bag of beer that we had. So yeah, nice way to start off 2024, although filming this review a day or two early. But yeah, no sediment really visible in the bottom of the bottle there, but you can see when the beer poured, it had about a quarter finger of a frothy kind of dark tan head there. So medium-sized bubbles on the surface and little bubbles as you go further up, but you can see yourself that that head has completely dissipated now, which isn't a surprise when it comes to such a high alcohol Imperial Stout. Yeah, it looks very, very nice, this one, and pretty much as you would expect from the Stout. So if we shine the light through this, you can see that this beer is pretty much black as night. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use, that goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour of it as well. But yeah, when it comes to Imperial Stouts, it's very difficult to affect the colour of these because of the presence of, you know, special B, black malts, carafa, things like that. There's not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this beer, but yeah, one or two bubbles just sticking toward the side of the glass there. But as I say, you can see that this beer is pretty much black as night, but that's what you would expect from an Imperial Stout. A lovely, very dark, ebony, rosewood type colour actually. But yeah, not a lot of light passing through this one, and when it's got oats and syrups and things like that in it, that's kind of to be expected. There is just a very slight sort of Coca-Cola, Pepsi coloured edge to this one. So yeah, it looks good. Certainly looks how I would expect the style to appear. The things you can do with Imperial Stouts to play with them a little bit is that you can do like double and triple mashes and things like that, or you can do longer wort boils. And with this one being as dark and leaving as much lacing on the glass as it is, I do wonder if this is maybe a double mash Imperial Stout. So we need to see. You can usually tell from the mouthfeel, so we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But nothing else we need to say about the appearance. Let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one and see what it's all about. But yeah, I'm going to say that's pretty interesting. You can smell, as I say, the newer versions of this beer are labelled Imperial Pastry Stouts. I don't know if that was much of a term when this beer would have been produced back in 2020 or whenever it was from. But yeah, you can certainly smell a little bit of that kind of pastry stout influence. And as I've mentioned before, pastry stouts are not my favourite style. They tend to be a hit or a miss. I'm not a great fan of the kind of marzipan-y or granola flavour that you can get from these things. But I get the feeling that this one is going to be more like a slightly sweeter Imperial Milk Stout, maybe akin to the old school things from Omnipol back in Sweden. That's certainly the impression it gives from the aroma, but it's a very, very sweet, big, oily character that's coming out of this. Yeah, I think this is going to be good. So, yeah, take a wee bit of time to just to enjoy the aromas. I always say that's half of the experience when it comes to craft beer. But yeah, for me, this beer smells really quite nice. So on the on the malty side of things, just on the aroma, you can smell there's a little bit of a kind of like rye bready, bread crusty sort of thing coming out of this one, but it has this sort of kind of Christmas pudding type note, and my nose is very sensitive to Christmas pudding because my dad loved that for his birthday cake in February. My mum always used to make it. So this beer really has quite a Christmas pudding type vibe to it. And there is a little bit of that marzipan-y kind of note coming out of this one from from the pastry stout side of things. So I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out in the flavour. But yeah, you've got toasty. You've got a little bit of that roasty, toasty, like rye bread crust. You certainly get a little bit of a kind of like chocolate sponge cake out of this one. There's wee elements of kind of nutty and woody character in there. But yeah, a little touch of rye bread, a little bit of a sweeter brown bread as well. And yeah, you have this kind of toasty, brown sugary note out of this one. So yeah, toasty brown sugary character. It's got a little bit of a kind of treacle molassesy sort of thing to it, this one, but it doesn't come across from the aroma. The brown sugars are actually quite sweet and quite oily. They don't come across as being kind of drier and more leathery as you can get from stouts that have had that longer wort boil. So yeah, there's toasty caramel in there, there's a bit of treacle and molasses, oily sweet caramel in there, a little bit of like McVitie's digestive biscuit as well, and yeah, you're getting one or two little elements of kind of nutty character in there. The vanilla beans, I get a little bit of vanilla, and you can smell a wee bit of that fibrous thing. If I was guessing it, I think it, from the aroma, if I was told, oh, there's some kind of bean in there, I'd probably guess that it was tonka beans, actually. But yeah, the aroma, this one on the malty and yeasty side of things is, yeah, quite interesting. Really pastry stout-ish for sure. So yeah, aroma-wise, this is really quite nice. I do like how all of this pieces together. Yeah. Interesting stuff. On the hoppy side of things then, there's not too much to report there. I mean, pastry stouts are not the most hop forward style of beer in the first place, neither are kind of regular imperial stouts, and this beer is a couple of years old, so a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one. But there are wee remnants. There's a very slight earthiness to it, there's a little bit of floral character. That's very, very minimal though, I would add, and you've got a wee touch of grassiness in there. But yeah, I don't think there's too much to report on the hoppy side of things. Yeah, on the fruity side of things, it's actually quite mild as well. I mean, there's maybe a little bit of like a kind of juicy plum. I'm not really getting sharp raisins out of this one. A little bit of juicy plum, maybe a little bit of like sultana and fig, and then yeah, a little bit of kind of black currant as well. Aroma wise, this one's just really quite nice. It does have a wee bit of that kind of pastry stout, the sort of marzipan-y thing that I'm not a great fan of, but yeah, I think I think it might play out quite differently in the flavour, as I say. So as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer. Sometimes beers are very close to their aroma, sometimes they're a little bit different, and I think it's always interesting to reflect on that, and that's one of the reasons why I like doing these longer reviews. But yeah, this one for me, very sweet, very oily kind of imperial stout. This one, lots of depth to the brown sugar, and you can smell, the more that you smell this one, the more the kind of maple syrupy character comes out. But like I said earlier, treacle, molasses, little bit of Werther's Original, butter candy, butterscotch, toasty brown sugar. Yeah, that's where the majority of the complexity in this beer is. But yeah, enjoy the aroma a little bit. I think it is about time that we have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is one of the original versions of the Saturn Imperial Stout from Uchu Brewing in Hokuto City, Yamanashi Prefecture here in Japan. My first Imperial Stout from these guys, or my first beer that's not some kind of IPA from them, if memory serves me correctly. So let's try this. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kampai, and a very happy 2024 to all of you. Let's do this. Slàinte. Ooh, that's nice. Yeah, I did notice on the Untappd pages for the new version of this beer, they were calling it a dessert stout, and it really is. It's quite a sweet one. This, it's actually the best way that I can think to describe this to my viewers would be that it's very similar to some of the original kind of cakey imperial stouts from Omnipollo in Stockholm, but it has a little bit of the kind of American milk stout type quality to it as well. It's really nice. This is a very, very good beer, so a big thumbs up to Uchu Brewing for this. This is pretty good. It's not quite what I was expecting from the aroma, right enough. It really is more like an imperial milk, like a sweet imperial milk stout. This one, so I like that. I'm glad that it's not too like it. Well, it's not even marzipan-y or granola at all. I think we can say that's for sure. Mm. But yeah, that's very nice. You get more and more of the maple syrup and the vanilla out of this one, and the flavour, the further that you go with it. Um, so yeah, this is as I say, imperial pastry stouts can be a hit or a miss with me. This one's definitely a hit. This leans toward that sweeter imperial milk stout part of the spectrum. So yeah, let's break this beer down then and describe it a wee bit more in depth as we always do. We'll start on the middle third of the palate then. Mm. So, middle third of the palate, for me, the backbone of the beer, you've got a little bit of that. I was thinking in the aroma it was more like a rye bready bread crust, but it's actually a lot kind of smoother and sweeter than that. It's almost like the edge of a chocolate muffin or like a chocolate sponge cake or something like that. That's what you're getting. That's the backbone of this beer. Now, as you move further forward in that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a little bit of woodiness in there, there's a little bit of nuttiness, and that comes out a wee bit more into the aftertaste. I think nuttiness is probably the best way to describe all of that. And above that kind of cake edge layer, as we can call it, you can feel there's a little bit of that sweet. It's like a mix of a kind of caramel sponge and chocolate sponge. Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of that in this one. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together is really nice. So within the sponge layer, you do get a little bit of the. You can feel a wee bit of the vanilla bean kind of coming out in this one, and it does have a very, very slight, almost kind of marzipan-y type quality to it. I forget what the Americans call marzipan. I know they have a different name for it, but there's a very slight marzipan-y type note coming out of this beer. The further into the aftertaste that you go, but certainly above that cakey layer is actually quite light and quite airy. You can feel the brown sugary notes and the chocolate starting to come out of this one. So above the cakey layer, you get a kind of like slightly drier cocoa nibby type note to this one. So at the back of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's maybe a sort of 60% cocoa chocolate, maybe 60 to 70% cocoa chocolate, like a slightly darker chocolate there. Then as you move further forward on the palate, you can feel that it gradually becomes more and more like a sort of 30-40% milk chocolate, and that's a reflection of what you generally get with your palate. Sweeter flavours come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So yeah, above the cake, the sort of sponge cakey layer, as I say, you have the chocolatey layer. Then it's all about the brown sugars actually. But I would say further forward in the chocolatey layer, you start to get a wee bit more of the vanilla bean. And I think I didn't say earlier that this beer contains lactose as well, which is a big factor in these kind of the level of sweetness that you get out of this. It's very, very smooth. Mm. So yeah, on top of the chocolatey layer, like I was saying, and it's quite a smooth and oily chocolate. Sometimes the chocolate layers can be a bit dry, but then you start to get the big brown sugary notes out of this one, and it's almost like you can feel that the maple syrup that's in this beer is kind of forming the base of the kind of brown sugar there. You can just feel that it's almost like slightly toasty and sweet and toasty on the edge, and it just gets more dense and oily toward the middle. So you've got like a big circle in the middle of your palate, where the maple syrup is, and yeah, toasty on the edge and more sweet and oily in the middle. But above that, you can feel a layer of kind of straight up sweet caramel, and then maybe in the very center of your palate, you've got a wee bit of that more kind of dense treacle molasses sort of things. But as you often get, the alcohol flavors really concentrate themselves in the middle of the palate, and you can certainly feel that going on in this particular beer. And I like it. I do like how that pieces together in this one. So yeah. So yeah, for me, I think that's everything we really need to say about that middle third of the palate. The only other thing I would say is you get into the aftertaste, you get a wee touch of the nuttiness and a wee touch of the kind of marzipan-y notes coming out of the beer. So yeah, let's go to the back third of the palate then. As I've often said on the channel, the back third of your palate is going to give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But that border region between middle and back third of your palate is it is showing you some of the cakey notes. So in the base, you've got that kind of sponge, that almost like chocolatey sponge cakey note there. But I think it feels a little bit more like it's almost brandy soaked or something. And then yeah. You can feel as you go further up, it feels a bit drier and more kind of like a chocolatey sponge. But the base of the back third of the palate there, you've got the cake edge, which is a bit drier. Almost feels like it has a bit toasty cocoa nib or something mixed in with it. But then yeah, you've got that sponge cakey layer, which feels taller and lighter and more airy. And yeah, I do really like how that pieces together. But above everything else on that, you can feel a little bit of the chocolatey layer just creeping over the top of that cakey character, and then a bit of the drier brown, the more dry toasty elements of the brown sugar sitting there, and then above that you've got the little more dense yeasty character coming out of this beer. So the yeasty note that sits on the top of that back third of the palate is a wee bit more like a really dense and really sweet mix of like chocolate and caramel sponge. It maybe has a wee bit of like a cocoa nib, cocoa powder sort of thing wrapped around it. Then you get the kind of oily, toasty honeycomb. That's really what comes out of this beer, which is quite nice. But definitely, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of squashes down, and yeah, it just squashes down and condenses together. So yeah, the way that goes together is really, really nice. Yeah. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. Yeah, but definitely it has pastry stout elements to this, and I think it shows those a little bit more into the aftertaste. But it's also got a lot of like sweet stout and milk stout type qualities to it, this beer. But yeah, we've said everything we need about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things. As I said earlier, this beer doesn't show so much in the way of hoppy characters, but in the back corners of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, you can feel it has a little touch of herbal quality, and as you push toward the front corners of the palate, you've got a little touch of floral note in there, then a nice kind of little grassy sort of thing coming out of it as well. So yeah, you do have the remnants of a green component in there, but it really takes a back seat to all the kind of sweeter, more malty character that comes out of this beer. So yeah, interesting stuff. Let's focus on the front third of your palate then and the fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get that kind of chocolatey caramel sponge cakey build up in there. It's almost like that part of the beer feels as if it's got a little bit more like a kind of brandy salt type vibe, which is interesting. But the base of that front third of your palate, yeah, you have the you have a little bit of the kind of cocoa powder. You've got a little bit of that sort of cocoa powder coming out of the beer too. Is cocoa powder the right word? No, you've got that drier cake edge sort of thing with almost what feels like a little bit of cocoa powder to it, then a layer of the kind of chocolate sponge cakey thing again, and then maybe a wee bit of a smoother chocolate sitting on top of that. Then you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll the way out of the beer, and I think that goes together very, very well actually. So on the fruity side of things, with this beer, you'll see you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So above that, the fruity side of this beer is quite interesting. It's quite similar to what I was thinking it would be from the aroma. So maybe when you first take the beer in, you do get a little bit of this kind of sharper, raisiny, blackberry sort of impact, and that sits on, it comes in just behind the front tip of your tongue and rolls back a little bit. But certainly on that on the back half of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of juicy plum. Underneath that, you get a little mix of like dates, sultanas, prunes. There's a wee bit of that kind of vibe going on. As you move further forward toward the middle of that front third of your palate, it's kind of juicy figs, and then in the front half, it's a lot of kind of black currant that you're getting out of this one. So yeah, nice little, big juicy black currant in there. That lingers into the aftertaste. I don't really get the sharper kind of blackberry out of this beer and the raisin, other than on the impact when you first take it in. So yeah, plums in the back half, plums, bit of prune, date, sultana. As you reach the middle, fig, then black currant. I think that's a good way to describe the fruity character that's coming out of this beer. But yeah, I think overall this is really quite nice. It's very much like an Imperial milk stout, this one, with little hints of pastry stout type quality to it for me. But it's a big oily beast of a beer, this, but very well done. I would love to see more Imperial stouts from Uchu Brewing. It'd be cool to see them do some barley wines and stuff like that as well, because they're obviously very capable brewers, but we'll just need to keep our eyes open and see what they release. But yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the flavour of this one. Let's round off the review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, this beer is definitely full bodied. I would say it's in the kind of middle part of the full bodied range. The carbonation in this one is almost non-existent. It's got a really quite silky mouthfeel to it, and at the same time you can feel it's quite clean. Again, that's the Japanese water quality, volcanic island, and all that sort of stuff. In terms of IBUs, I think this beer is probably like 10, like maybe not even 10. It's a very, very sweet beer, this one. So yeah, maybe you've got 10 IBUs at the absolute most. A little bit of hoppy, dryness and bitterness on the sides of the palate there, but then yeah, lots and lots of kind of big malty character, bit of dryness underneath, lovely kind of smoothness in the middle, and a kind of sweetness as well, and big kind of almost milk stouty type sweetness sitting on top of that. You've got lovely kind of juicy red fruity characters in this one, and overall the beer mouthfeel, the way to describe it is sort of silky, oily, and still quite clean, and very sweet as well actually. So yeah, a really nice and enjoyable stout, this one. I do think that the fact that they call this a dessert stout is quite interesting, but it's a very sweet dessert stout. Yeah, mostly I'd say it's kind of like 80 to 90% Imperial milk stout in its characteristics, but it does have that wee hint of pastry stout type quality, particularly in the aftertaste. You do get a wee bit of a kind of marzipan-y type vibe to it in the aftertaste. But yeah, beautiful beer from Uchu Brewing, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. Although this beer is quite it's quite decadent. Let's just say that this is a kind of once a year type beer or a special occasion beer for sure. So keep that in mind if you come across the cans, the Saturn cans, the modern Saturn cans from Uchu Brewing. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Uchu Brewing. This one was the Saturn, an Imperial Stout at 12% ABV. One of the original versions, maybe the original version of this beer. A lovely big kind of sweet Imperial milk stout that has a little bit of modern pastry stout qualities to it as well. But certainly cool to try something from the dark end of the spectrum from Uchu, and I look forward to more kind of random styles from these guys as time goes on. But yeah, if you're interested in New England hazy IPAs, then or any IPA style in general, Uchu Brewing are one of the Japanese breweries that you really need to check out. But yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Check out my social media, check out Uchu Brewing's social media, and you will see more from these guys on the channel very, very soon. Slange, Skål, cheers, Kampai, Saturn from Uchu Brewing in Hokuto, Yamanashi Prefecture in central Japan. Kampai.